Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video. We're here at Jerez in Spain. Just got back from the road ride today where we've been swapping between the brand new 2023 Street Triple R and the RS. And there are some key differences here. I've got 10 for you to help you decide which one of these bikes is right for you. And I will say the temptation might be always to go for the RS, but there's a lot of pluses with this bike too. Now the first key difference here is the engine, and although they are physically the same, they do get a slightly different tune. So the R model makes 120 PS peak, but the RS gets another 10 PS on top of that. Now on the road, I don't think you'll notice a massive deal of difference. If you're spending most of your time in the mid-range, then realistically they feel largely the same. It's just when you really start to rev out the RS that it's got that extra 10% or so right at the top there. So if you're doing track days, stuff like that, certainly the RS is the one to go for, but for just day-to-day riding, I wouldn't say this is a massive differentiating factor. Now it's a similar story with the braking setup. So the RS gets top spec BREMBO STYLEMA calipers, and it also gets a BREMBO radial master cylinder and an MCS span and ratio adjustable lever. The R is not bad. It gets BREMBO M4.32 calipers, and this in master cylinder, it still gets an adjustable lever, but generally it's a little lower spec. And so while the braking performance is still perfectly good, you've just got a little bit more customization here, a little more power, and I think quite a bit more progression and feel. Now with both bikes you get a Showa big piston separate function upside down fork, fully adjustable as well, so I think there might be some slight differences, but largely they're pretty much the same. But at the rear you get a Showa shock on the R, but this RS model gets an OHLINS fully adjustable shock, and there is a pronounced difference in the quality of the ride at the rear here. But I think what's perhaps more significant is the fact that they've added a 10mm spacer on the rear shock on the RS, and of course you've got a greater rear ride height. It jacks the back end up, and that affects the whole geometry of the bike. It's got a steeper rake, and that means that it's going to feel more nimble and responsive and quicker to turn, whereas the R is a little bit more chilled out and perhaps better suited to road riding. Naturally it affects the riding position as well. So the RS is 10mm higher in the seat, and that gets you up and over the bars and into a more sporty riding position, whereas this, the R, is a little bit easier to get on with when you're just doing general road riding. To be just a touch more sat up means you've got more of an easy view of the traffic ahead. Of course it's easier to flat foot as well, and so while there are options in the accessories catalogue to lower the seat, straight out the dealer, if you're looking for the bike that's the most accessible and you're not that keen on a tall seat height, then the R fits the bill. Now on the tyres front we've got Continental Conti Road on the R model, and these are more suited to year-round riding. I mean, if you look at the tread pattern you can see there's more deeper tread for getting plenty of water out the way, whereas the Pirelli Supercorsa SPs on the RS are more biased towards sporty riding in the dry and that sort of thing. Generally I'd say I'm perfectly happy with the tyre performance on both bikes, but it is a warm day in Spain. It might be a different story if we're back in the UK and it's wet and it's winter. But yeah, if you're riding a bit quicker and you want that slightly more sticky, sporty feel, then of course the Pirellis are going to give you that. And it's the same story across the whole bike. It's not absolutely night and day, but in just every little area the RS adds a touch more performance. Now both bikes do get a fairly comprehensive suite of rider aids. So you've got a 6-axis IMU in both bikes. That gives you cornering ABS and cornering TC. You've got wheelie control. You've got a quick shifter up and down as standard on both bikes. Now to manage the levels of intervention from some of those rider aids in an intuitive way and to give you different throttle responses, you've got 4 modes. So rain, road, sport, and then rider, which allows you to configure it for yourself. But the RS does get an additional 5th mode called track, and that's going to give you the least intervention from the ABS and TC, and it's going to allow the front wheel to come up a little bit more. And so again, if you are thinking of doing track riding and that sounds like your sort of thing, then the RS does have a little bit more advantage. Now another key difference would be the dash. So the RS gets a 5-inch TFT display, and of course that gives you plenty of screen space to manage some of those settings, and also like a highly visible readout on some of the basic riding information like gear, speed and revs. The R is a little bit more basic in the cockpit, so you may be familiar with the switch gear and the dash from bikes like the Tiger Sport 660 and the Trident 660, and while it is a little bit more pared back, so you've got an inverted LCD at the top for speed and revs, and then a much smaller TFT section at the bottom, it does actually accommodate quite a lot of functionality. And if you spec either bike up with the Bluetooth connectivity, you can do stuff like handle calls and messages and control your music, as well as turn-by-turn nav. Functionally there's not a massive difference. You can still edit your custom rider mode, for example, on this bike. It's just that the cockpit is a little more basic. It does doesn't quite have that premium feel. The buttons don't feel quite as nice to the touch, and also things like the levers, you know, they are a little more basic and you don't have adjustability on the clutch, for example. Now this is probably a good point at which to say a massive thanks to Speedo Angels for sponsoring the channel. Whether you've got an R, an RS, or pretty much any other new bike from a major manufacturer, Speedo Angels dash protectors could save you hundreds if not thousands. Take the previous generation Street Triple RS for example. The dash assembly for that, I had a quick look online and the cheapest I could find was $665, and that's if you can find one at all because they're sold out in most places. Speedo Angels dash protectors though, they cost just a few quid, and they've also been kind enough to give me a 20% discount code specifically for my viewers, which you'll find down in the description along with a link to their website. So once again, a massive thanks to Speedo Angels for their support. Now number 9 would be the color choices. So there's a couple for the R, including this silver, and they're a little bit more subdued and basic, whereas the RS comes in this beautiful red, which is really quite rich when you see it in person. There's a silver version as well with an orange accent, and then there's also quite a bright yellow, which I think might be pretty popular. I don't think it was a color that I was that fond of when I saw it in the pictures, but seeing it in the flesh, it's really punchy and a bit more loud than some of the other choices. I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments, so do let me know. Now number 10 would of course be the price. So the R starts at $9,595, whereas the RS is, you know, almost a couple of grand more at $11,295, and you'll add a bit for some of the fancier paint options. Both feel like pretty decent value for money. I mean, you can see where the extra budget has gone in terms of the upgrades on the RS, and yet the R still offers plenty of great features, you know, the same fundamentals, that great engine, a great chassis for sub 10 grand, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, if you're on a fixed budget, you know, a tight budget, then yeah, that's going to offer plenty of bang for your buck. Personally, I would say don't write it off. Like I said at the top of the video, it's very tempting just to shoot for the top spec model, but actually it's that rear ride height, I think, that gives them quite a different handling characteristic and makes this feel like a little bit more of a chilled out road bias bike, whereas this is more, you know, it wants to go quicker, and while that's desirable for some people, it might not be for everyone. So definitely get down to a dealer, see if you can ride both bikes, and that'll be the best way to make your mind up. As always though, I'd love to know from you which one you'd pick down in the comments below, so do let me know. And if you haven't already seen the review of the RS, which I shot earlier today, it's already live and I'll link to it here on the screen. So give it a click, give it a watch, and let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.